Merry Christmas. It's Transfer Portal. It's still open. It's also almost time to go bowling. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available where you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a quick moment to say how thankful we are for all of you. This podcast has grown so much. And we're not just talking hyperbole here, folks. As of today, or as of the 23rd, we are the number one college basketball show on the Locked On Podcast Network, according to Apple's Top 100 rankings. And it's because of fans like you who value great UConn content. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering both UConn men's and women's basketball, the hoops capital of the world, and as we're going to do today, cover the UConn football program. And we're thrilled to bring you that coverage because you deserve it. So to show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to games, and making monthly donations to Bleeding Blue for Good, supporting NIL initiatives that make a difference. If you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, leave a positive review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, today we have a special show. When this comes out, it'll be Christmas Day. So we're going to bring you. My Christmas present was to hang out with Pete Cowan. So here we go. We got Pete in here. Pete, we got a bunch of stuff going on. Obviously, the transfer portal, it's like it doesn't sleep, right? We have, how many commits? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 on our list that have committed to UConn. Maybe there's more before this episode even comes out. But of the players who committed to UConn recently in the transfer portal, who is your number one, or stack rank them? Like, go through that list and tell me who your top player is. Impact-wise, and then give me some reasons why.
Well, I think the number one guy that will probably have the most impact will be Hayden Bozic, offensive tackle from Brown. He's a multi-year all-conference player there. Has great size, fits the profile what we like in our offensive tackles. We seem to like, basketball-sized players, 6'7", 315. Has pretty good feet. Has faced some pretty decent competition that is transferring out of the Ivy League and signing at a notable mid-major or Power 4 school. So he's probably going to be the most impactful one right away. Other guys that I really like, Kamoe Latu, defensive back from Wisconsin. Many people will have seen Skylar Bell actively recruiting him on Twitter. I like his energy a lot. Great size for a safety, 6 foot, 210. Brings a lot of heat, a lot of energy. I remember him a couple games last year in the 2023 season, sticking out on TV and playing at a high intensity. I think he'll be a great fit in our 3-3-5 system. And the other guy that I'm interested in looking at is MJ Flowers, running back from Eastern Illinois, 220-pound. Multifaceted back from Eastern Illinois, an FCS program. The guy that presents in our backfield a type of size and a running ability that we haven't had in a while. I'd be interested to see how he fits in our system.
Pete, with that specific running back, does he fit like a replacement for Darrell, or is Darrell kind of a little bit more dynamic? I'm curious, like what the comp is there, the comparison.
Darrell had elite vision.
Okay.
I think that's what separated him. He was able to see holes as they develop and see creases and get himself to pop. He had underestimated speed. The jury's going to be out on, whether or not he can see things as quickly at this level. A lot like how it was with Mel Brown before he showed out. And he obviously has shown great ability to translate to the FBS level. But it's, the jury's going to be still be out to see what he can do. He did, and he competed in a great conference in the FCS at Eastern Illinois against top flight competition. So I anticipate he might be able to translate well, and with supposedly better linemen, he might be very productive with us.
Okay. What about Vincent Jackson, defensive lineman from Nebraska? Where do you have him on an impact list? Also, he follows me, so I want to give him some love.
Vincent definitely shores up the depth that we will be losing on the defensive line. I think he's one of 3 that we've recruited already with Trent Jones and Steph Wright. And with Price coming back, I think it's going to create more depth. He's going to bring more power, more strength, and translate very well his skills to our defense because Matt Rule likes to run a 3-4 out in Nebraska. So his skill set's going to translate very well to a 3-5. And the way that Matt calls it, I think he's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities to defeat in blocking and possibly, generate more tackles for loss, more sacks in our system and up his profile, which is probably why he signed with us.
For sure. Should it surprise anyone that Skylar Bell and others are testing the waters in the transfer portal?
From a marketing standpoint with the new dynamic, no. If this is a mini NFL, and the only difference is you don't have, multi-year contracts. You literally have 1-year contracts you renew every year. This is not surprising at all. I would say expect this quite a bit, even if we were to bump up to a P4 program. This is just going to be the reality until they establish some parameters as to what the windows will be, how long a player will be mandated to stay at a particular institution. Otherwise, you're going to continue to see this as things are and designed to be in terms of the 1-year renewable contracts with the scholarships. This is the fundamental dynamics and workings based on the definitions established by the NCAA that's going to happen because of the transfer portal. Yeah.
This is something I asked you pre-show before we get into the break and then talk about the Fenway Bowl. I had Seth Greenberg, he's a 2-time ACC Coach of the Year on to talk Husky hoops a couple days ago. And one of the things I asked him was if he was coaching today, what would be different? Because he coached at the mid-major level, he coached at the high major level in his career before he retired. And he said the differences for me in basketball, and this could be different for football, but I'm curious what the perspective would be for someone that's played at UConn, and what your thoughts are on this. He basically said if he was at a mid-major program, like when he was at Long Beach State, he would have created kind of almost like a JUCO program where it's like you can recruit a bunch of really good players and say, hey, I'm going to treat this like a 2-year thing. You come in for 2 years, and if you want to leave, then I'm going to help you get to where you want to go. Similar to what Jim Mora did with Darrell Robinson, likely, you know what I mean? Like from a perspective, it wasn't like, hey, you can't leave. But his point was, if you talk about the reality, then smaller programs or non-P4 programs are going to still get good players. It's just up to you to let them either convince them to stay or wish them well when they leave. Do you agree with that UConn football would be better served if they treated things like that? Not that they're a JUCO program, but the fact that it's almost like a stepping stone until we actually get into a potential P4 conference.
Given the pedigree we've had historically and the man that's in charge right now, I wouldn't necessarily say that the grass would be greener on the other side for players that transfer out.
Sure.
Despite our history, we've had, notable success in progressing and developing players to the next level because of the facilities we have on campus, because of the types of coaches we've had. And I would just dare say this, having my own contacts at the NFL level, having been there, it'd be a couple of weeks, through internships and stuff. Repetitions are important. It's not so much where you go as a player, it's the experience you get on the field. And it doesn't have to be at a P4 program. It could be that, the more repetitions you have, particularly in specific circumstances that translate to what you're going to face in the NFL, the better it's going to serve you. It doesn't always serve you to be on the scout team at a P4 school and say that, you're developing there as opposed to getting game experience, because that's where, the scouts are going to look for. And there's even a disconnect somewhat with the scouts and what the coaches want, because, sometimes scouts will be, pretty drunk on getting people from certain programs, certain certain conferences, but they won't always translate to the NFL. I can think of a perfect example down here where, a smaller level guy made the team was the Jalen Coker is a wide receiver starting for the Panthers. He played at the Holy Cross. He was a multi-year all conference player at a Patriot League school. And so it does. And if you're good enough, they're going to find you. And I think, particularly guys like Skyler and Price, I think you got to consider, if you go to a Power 4 school, are you going to be the starter? Are you going to be the guy like you are here? Yeah. Or are you going to be wide receiver number 3, wide receiver number 4, even though you're getting paid well? So those are the things they got to weigh. And it's a tough sled for all the players, really, because, all the windows and all the dynamics that are currently on them, there's a lot of pressure for them to make life altering decisions, and I don't envy their position, honestly.
No, I totally agree with you. When we return, we're going to talk about the Fenway Bowl. Ask Pete some questions around that. If this counts for a Bill Belichick loss, if he gets one, and all of that. I was at the Carolina Stadium watching the North Carolina State finals where Greensboro won, Grimsley won, and all I could think of was soon Bill Belichick will be roaming these sidelines. So we're going to talk about that coming up after the break. The holidays are one of my favorite times of year for live events. That's something special about bringing people together and creating lasting memories. One of my favorite memories was catching a UConn football game long time ago when I used to live in Connecticut. There's nothing like that electric atmosphere and the camaraderie that comes with cheering any of your favorite teams on in person. And this holiday season, there's no better way to experience the excitement than Game Time. They're all about togetherness, making live events the perfect gift for loved ones. And there's a new feature called Game Time Picks. It's never been easier to score great deals on tickets. Let me tell you about my experience. And this is usually third party because, as I mentioned before, if I go to games now, I get to go for free because your boy's a member of the media. So I get to go in and hang out. But if people ask you, hey, how do I get tickets to this game? I usually tell them Game Time Picks. You can find amazing deals for seats that give a perfect view that you can send to friends, and they don't have to break the bank. Plus, you can even see a panoramic preview of what it's going to look like and kind of look around and make sure that's where you want to sit. What I love most about Game Time is how straightforward it is. If you're worried about missing out on the best price, don't. You get 110% credit if you find a better ticket price later on. So with flexible customer service, they have a 24-hour return policy. Game Time truly has your back. They make the process stress-free. So all you have to do is enjoy the game. So what are you waiting for? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Just use LOCKEDONCollege to save $20 off. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets this holiday season and bring people together this holiday. What time is it? It's Game Time. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with Pete Callen, former DB for the UConn Huskies and contributor to the Locked On UConn podcast. Has his own podcast, TNT College Football Podcast, with Bobby Wilson, who was out with pneumonia. Hopefully you're recovered by the time this episode airs because it'll be Christmas morning. And I hope you're hanging out with your kids and opening up presents and all that stuff. So we miss you on this. Pete, the Fenway Bowl. I read something, and I know you won't like this because you played football at UConn, but it made me laugh because it's like it's just the scenario of what UConn is usually talked about, basketball, and North Carolina basketball. They said, gotta love bowl season when two teams from basketball schools are going to play a football game in a baseball stadium. So I thought that was funny. It's hysterical. Like, and what I'm curious, I don't remember watching the Fenway Bowl last year. What's the dimensions? Like, where do they play? Is it from the monster to right field, and like the sidelines are center field and like home plate? How do they do it?
I think one of the near sidelines along the first baseline.
Okay.
It runs from home plate to right field, and then the green monster, I think, is in the background toward the far corner end zone on the far sideline. There's no crowd behind the opposing team facing the camera.
Okay.
On the opposite side. So that's what I believe it was when I've seen it. That's probably the most logistical. Most baseball stadiums have their football field fit along the first base line when they're playing. So,
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
It definitely would be a sight to see. I know it's real cold up there right now. And they're not in Boston, but my parents are like, it's freezing. It was like 16 degrees in New York yesterday. So, I don't envy the players. Obviously, I think that helps UConn because they're used to the cold weather. This because we're both, residents of North Carolina. It's no picnic in North Carolina. It's a little bit better than up north. It's particularly in the wintertime. So it's not like you're playing, a team from Tampa. So like I think that's going to be overblown. These kids are going to play. It's not that big a deal.
I don't, because you got a lot of players from South Carolina, the deeper South, Florida, coming up to play to North Carolina. And I always tell people the difference between New England cold, Chicago cold, and cold down here is the cold up there gets down to your bones. And that's something that they're not going to be used to.
That's fair.
Playing in football uniforms and a football game. That's tough. That's a tough deal if you're not accustomed to it.
Okay, fair enough. Listen, I take your word for it. I've only played football one season of my life, and it was in New England. So I get it. I don't even think it was that cold that year. But anyway, that's not the point. I think for me, the interesting part of this game is who plays, right? I mean, you have players on both sides that are in the portal, and like without even really getting into the context of that. You talked about not envying the players, like. How do the coaches even game plan for this game? Like, how do you do it?
The best you can,
right?
I mean, you kind of hope that the younger players that you recruited step up and are every bit what you thought they might be as players, and with this experience, step up and show the type of players that they are, and when you plug them in, that's all you can do, really. It is what it is. But at the same time, you did recruit them for a reason. You expect them to produce, and the only way you're going to find out is by putting them in a game situation and roll with them. That's it.
Do you think from UConn's perspective, because we've talked about quarterback a lot in this podcast, I haven't heard, like, are they going to let Nick and Joe play against North Carolina, or is one of them going to start and the other one sits? Like, do you think they're going to mix it up? I'm curious.
If they're playing to win, they're going to play the guy that they think is going to give them the best chance. I would assume it's Joe, because he's been the most consistent, and he's a senior. It's going to be his last year. They might have packages with Nick,
especially with the time, right, to be able to install them.
Right. I would assume that Nick will get in there. Especially with his running ability. If they're going to put, open up the entire playbook and try to win the game, I would assume that he's going to be in there for a couple of plays or a couple of series, even maybe try to, throw North Carolina off track if they think his skill set will, add something to the offense that will, make the defense vulnerable. So I expect everything and anything this game. The full playbook open to win the game for the Huskies.
For sure. Honestly, man, I want to say this to you before we go. I appreciate all of your contributions to Locked on UConn. Thank you so much for always jumping on the Friday shows and bringing some valuable value to the show by being a former player and having all the experiences you've had, whether it's interning in the NFL to kind of just talking your own style on your own podcast. So thanks for contributing, and we really appreciate you.
It's been a pleasure and a blessing to be here. I thank you. I thank Husky Nation for lending your trust and your ear to my opinion. It is definitely a privilege, and it's been fun. And thank you very much for you guys' time and patience sometimes, maybe. But appreciate everybody. Love Husky Nation and love this team, and I hope it's portrayed in our commentary. So,
for sure. Well, listen, we're going to drop you off. I want to let everyone know. Stick around for the last segment. I think you're really going to appreciate it. We have a special young man that I got introduced to from a listener who wants to play college football. One of his dream schools is UConn because he has some roots in Connecticut. He's a young kid. Small in stature, but this dude, I've seen a little bit of tape. He's a warrior. They live out in Hawaii because he's a military kid. I got a chance to interview this young man, and it's Christmas. Take a step back, listen to some of his story, and I just thought it was appropriate to put him on a football show, considering he wants to come play football for the Huskies. He also says he could play for, want to play for Tennessee or the Washington Huskies too. He's lived quite a few different places as a military kid, but enjoy it for what it is. And I appreciate Pete. We're going to have DJ Moore coming up after the break. The NFL playoffs are just around the corner, and there's still time to cash in on the regular season excitement with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now customers can end the season on a high note with $250 in bonus bets when you make your first $5 bet and win. FanDuel makes it better and exciting as the game itself. So last Sunday, I had a Tyrone Tracy anytime touchdown. The Giants are terrible, but he seems to score a lot of touchdowns. So that hit, that's always a fantastic rush. So it's not just about who's going to win the game. You can do, who will score first, how many points will be scored, and so much more. Head to FanDuel.com and sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to score $250 in bonus bets when you hit your first $5 wager. Make every play count with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're back on Locked On UConn. Originally, we planned to bring you a Christmas feature about a young man who dreams of playing college football, DJ Moore. I don't know if you guys remember, I've mentioned this a few times. I had a fan of the show reached out to me and said, "Hey, I got this great story for you. This my nephew is a football player that wants to potentially go to UConn. Plays a bunch of different positions. Real tough kid. The kicker is he's battled cancer pretty much his whole life when he was younger." And he's really he's fought through everything, and he's hungry to play at the next level. Got a little interest from across the country, but he lives in Hawaii because his dad is in the military, and they're both fans of the show and want to would love to shed some light on their story. So recorded a piece about 10-12 minutes and was going to add it to a football show, obviously, and the file got corrupted when I was doing the editing, which I don't know how it happened, but regardless, that's here nor there. So we're going to pivot and continue to do the transfer portal episode, but I did want to talk about it because it is Christmas, and I want to 100% get them back to record and put the episode out the same day, so we're clear, and so I think it also is kind of like a parallel to that kid's story. It's like sometimes people, this will be the third time we've recorded where something silly has happened. The first time we recorded, had a great interview with the kid. Halfway through, our system we use to put out our podcast lost all audio. So the last 5 minutes of the episode is just the two of us talking, laughing about, and it's just, there's no audio. So, but it's pretty apropos. This kid's been through, rounds of chemo, then, stuff that little kids shouldn't have to worry about. Now as a young man, learning that, maybe it's going to take him 1, 2, or 3 times to get something right every time. And that's okay, because that's why we fight. Right. But anyway, so we, as the saying goes in the business, we pivot, and wanted to just kind of talk through some of the players that we signed and then give you the list of those we've signed. We look at this. I think we've signed 10. Yeah, we signed 10 players on the transfer portal. They're getting better on both sides of the ball. The defensive side, Sammy Anderson Jr., originally from Cincinnati, spent 4 seasons with the Bearcats before transferring to Austin Peay, where then he led his team with 4 interceptions in 2024, now in his 6th college season. Anderson brings experience. And I love it when a guy is old like this on a group of 5 team, because that kind of brings that experience and talent they need. He'll join Devin Pringle and Kaluba Pee-wee Jr. to strengthen the Huskies backfield. MJ Flowers joins an interesting running back group at UConn that retained its leading rusher, Cam Edwards, but lost Darrell Robinson to Auburn. Flowers brings production and versatility, having a rush for 850 yards. This is the guy who Pete loved in the portal. Feels like he can really make the leap to the Division One, not 1A level. And then you have Trent Jones Jr. Jones comes from Iowa State, where he had a standout season in 2023 with 3 sacks and 19 tackles. In 24, he saw a dip in playing time. So I think that's one of the reasons why he's here. He's looking for his ability to shine. And I think he's going to do that by joining the Huskies defensive line. Terry Kirksey Jr. Had a limited season in 2024 at Kansas State, making just 1 tackle in 4 games, but there's a lot of talent there. So come on to the program. We'll figure it out. The rest of the list, we have my guy, Vincent Jackson from Nebraska. You have Hayden Bosich, offensive lineman from Brown, who I think everyone's excited about because they feel like he's a pro level prospect. Brian Parham from Washington. You have, and then Stephon Wright from a defensive lineman from ACC champion SMU, which is always good to add talent, right? So these are the players that we're transferring to us, and I hope that they catch on and have a dynamic season for the Huskies next year. Looking at the bigger picture, the portal remains an absolute tool for Jim Mora and his team to continue to take those next steps. I hope we can get that 9th win over the Bill Belichick's North Carolina Tar Heels. So it's still wild for me to say that. And finally, just want to say thank you for making Locked on UConn a part of your day every day. So if you're listening to this on Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Stay tuned for more stories, updates, insights in 2025 as we continue to follow the Huskies on their journey in basketball and football. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and go Huskies.